Supreme Court of Florida is now in ceremonial session. May God save these United States, great state of Florida, and this honorable court.
Please remain standing for the invocation by the Reverend Jim Bezier.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we come together this afternoon to honor Tom D. Hall, who has served with integrity as clerk of the Florida Supreme Court for the last 13 years and is now beginning a new chapter in his life as he enters retirement. We are ever so thankful for his administrative ability and legal analysis, and most especially his calm and gracious demeanor. We pray that his time of retirement will be fulfilling and rewarding for both he and Lisa. We pray also for John Tomasino as he assumes the many duties that Tom so faithfully carried out while in service to the Florida Supreme Court. Lord, we ask this in your most holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Welcome to the Florida Supreme Court, and most especially to the many members of our extended court family who returned to us today for a very special occasion. Today we'll honor someone who has served this court in one of its most responsible offices for what may be viewed as the most significant period of time in its history, and certainly its most public. That person, of course, is our Clerk of Court, Tom Hall. In June this year at the Bar Convention, this court honored Tom for his many talents, which have benefited the work of the third branch in so many different ways. In a resolution, the court noted that Tom combines a talent for administration with a talent for legal analysis, both of which are consistently delivered with a calm and even temper. Today, the judicial branch is in the process of becoming paperless and is in a challenging technology transition. Tom has had a major part in that, and he will have an enduring legacy for helping to lead the way. Tom, on behalf of the Florida Supreme Court and the entire judicial branch, I want to thank you for your tireless efforts, your relentless dedication, and excellent service as the Florida Supreme Court's 20th Clerk of Court. Now I'd like to call upon the Honorable William DeCicco, Clerk of Court for the United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, for comments.
Chief Justice Polston and honorable justices of the court, may it please the court. What a great honor it is to be here today to recognize and congratulate our friend and colleague Tom Hall as he retires from his position as clerk of the Florida Supreme Court. My association with Tom stems from our membership in the National Conference of Appellate Court Clerks, an organization of over 200 state and federal appellate court clerks who are dedicated to improving the administration and practices of the appellate courts in this country and to providing educational opportunities for those clerks on the issues we all face from day to day. It is an active group of court professionals devoted to public service. I came here today to say to you, without qualification, that no one has done more for the appellate court clerks in this country than Tom Hall. Let me tell you why. Shortly after becoming clerk, he spoke at our annual meeting in 2001 on the valuable lessons he learned in handling high-profile cases. He was joined by Bill Souter, the clerk at the U.S. Supreme Court, and Tom Kahn, the clerk at the 11th Circuit. As I'm sure many of you will recall, those lessons were learned from the case of Bush v. Gore. I remember seeing Tom on television. It's the first time I saw him. in front of all those cameras and satellite dishes and trucks parked out in front of the courthouse here, and I had one thought, and one thought only. That poor guy. The following year, Tom was elected to a 3-year term on our executive committee. He attended meetings all around the country to foster the administration and management of the organization. And in 2005, he hosted our annual meeting in Key West. Now, this is an enormous undertaking to host one of these conferences, but one of the duties of the host clerk is to help organize the hospitality suite, where all the members can socialize in the evening. And I am told by Mr. Les Steen, who is the clerk at the Arkansas Supreme Court and the clerk that runs the hospitality suite, that Tom volunteered to be in charge of quality control of the beer. Mr. Steen informed me that this turned out to be an exercise in futility because Tom never met a beer he didn't like, particularly if it was free beer. In any event, after hosting our meeting in 2005, Tom coordinated the vendor show at our 2006 meeting in Fort Worth. He was the program chairman for the 2007 meeting in New Orleans, and then he served as our vice president and then president in 2008 and 2009. And in addition to all of the leadership responsibilities he took on, Tom made presentations and coordinated breakout sessions at every single meeting, from electronic filing to almost any other issue that you can think of that an appellate court clerk would have. And of great importance to our members, he was the key player in establishing the NCACC Educational Fund, which now subsidizes the cost of bringing distinguished speakers to speak at our meetings. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that for 8 years, Tom, using his photographic skills from the Navy, he was a photographer's mate on the USS Constellation, by the way. People know that, but using his photographic skills, and Lisa and Matt assembled a photographic record of our meetings each year, displaying them to the membership and archiving them for future clerks. Because of all he did, the National Conference of Appellate Court Clerks awarded Tom its highest honor in 2012, the J.O. Sentell Award, which is named after J.O. Sentell, the clerk of the Alabama Supreme Court and was one of the founders of the NCACC. In pertinent part, the citation reads, "The NCACC is a better conference due to Tom's hard work and service in many ways over the years. He epitomizes the qualities we honor as appellate court clerks." Now, regarding Tom's hard work, it reminds me of the saying, you should never trust luck to achieve your goals. Just remember that the harder you work, the luckier you're going to be. That's Tom Hall. But even after doing all of this and receiving the highest award we could give to him, Tom didn't let up. Instead, he just co-hosted our meeting in Seattle this past summer. So beyond any doubt, he has done more for the success of the NCACC and the continuing education and development of appellate court clerks in this country than anyone else. He is a very special person to us. Tom and Lisa, Matt, I speak for every member of the National Conference of Appellate Court Clerks and our families when I say thank you, congratulations. We wish you the very best. And I want to add one other thing, Tom, from one Navy veteran to another. I want to express to you the traditional Navy wish of fair winds and following seas in the days ahead. I know you're going to continue to excel in the future. Thank you very much, Chief Justice Polston.
I ask the Honorable Tim Smith, Clerk of the Court of Putnam County and Chair of the Florida Courts E-Filing Authority Board, to approach the bench for comments.
Chief Justice Polston, members of the court, if it may please the court, I'm so honored to be here today representing the trial court clerks in the state of Florida, all 67 elected clerks around the state. We were talking earlier about how that system differs in our state from others, but it works for us. And as the Honorable Mr. DeCicco was talking about the appellate court and the trial court, this really is where it's like a conveyor belt. These cases come and we've got to move them quick, and we continue to do that. And one of the things that I heard in the invocation and in the Honorable DeCicco's comments was Tom's good demeanor, calmness that he brings to the effort, and I will tell you, as chair of the Florida Court's e-file authority, that is exactly what has happened. I brought a sampling of case court jackets from my county. Now, the paperwork is not real, so nobody worries that we're moving cases around. And I brought my iPad. And if Chief Justice Polk, if you don't mind, I would like to, I brought a prop, but this is a picture of Tom Hall at our last e-file authority meeting. This is what Tom does most of the time during the meeting. It was interesting to me that I was thinking to myself, well, Tom sure looks at his iPad a lot. And so we were having a very technical discussion about standard criminal case code dockets, descriptions, code work that's going on, and Tom's over there, and I can see his finger moving on his iPad. And we get to a section, and we had a discussion on it, and Tom doesn't even look up, and he says, "You're missing line 13, section 2. How did he do that? I can't keep up with it when I've got a piece of paper. But that tells you the depth of Tom's knowledge and what he does for all of us. As we have moved forward through our e-file effort here, I especially want to thank the court for its support of that. It has been a remarkable effort. We are having much success. In fact, I had them pull some statistics for me that talked about the civil filings from April through September. We've had over 7 million documents filed through the portal, totaling 28 million pages, and on an annualized basis, that's 67 million pages through the portal. Now, that doesn't mean we don't print those somewhere right now, but we know what is coming, that this is going to this, and that's where we're heading. And we know within the next year or so that we're really going to begin to see the benefit of that effort. It will allow quicker service to the trial courts. It will provide better service to those folks that come in the front door of all those courthouses around the state. And for that, I'm very thankful. I was at the last FCTC meeting, Justice Polston, and during the break, Judge Munyon does let us take a break periodically. We were standing out in the hallway in Tampa, and I noticed that John Tomasino, the incoming clerk, was speaking to Tom, and I just happened to be going by. And I heard John say, "Tom," he said, "I really want to tell you, I really thank you for being such a great mentor." And Tom said, "I prefer idle." But I will tell you, and I'll wrap my comments up here, that Tom really is an idol to me, and particularly when you read his bio in the program, all that he has done for so many different parts of the court system and for the citizens of not only Florida but of this nation, and he really is a true hero in my view. And Tom, we wish you well as you move forward into the next phase of your life. We congratulate your family. We hope that this allows you to spend more time with them, and I'm so honored to call you as my friend. Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice.
Thank you, Tim, for those remarks and for all the work that you do, especially regarding the e-filing authority board. Thank you so much for your work. The court now recognizes Raul Quintero, former justice of the Florida Supreme Court, for remarks.
Thank you, Chief Justice Polston. May it please the court and all present. First of all, I want to say it's an honor to speak to you and to the court today without getting questions.
Who said that?
I joined the court in 2002 when Tom was here, and I was also the administrative justice on the court while I was here, which meant that I was the liaison to the clerk's office to kind of put cases together and make sure that cases that had the same issues traveled together, were tagged together. And I learned that the clerk's office, as you probably know, is kind of like air conditioning. Air conditioning is there, but you don't notice it when it's working. You only notice it when it stops working, and then you notice it real fast. And Tom kept that air conditioning working the entire time I was here. You really never noticed the clerk's office because it worked so well. It worked like clockwork. Not only Tom, but everybody under Tom was professional. They were the face of the court to the outside world. And every once in a while, I would get calls from friends of mine or lawyers who were calling, or maybe had something before the court before, or had come here for a ceremony like this one, and they would say, you know, that they're so nice there in the clerk's office, one of the nicest clerk's office that I know of. And that says a lot about Tom and about the reputation, the attitude that he instilled in that clerk's office. And I hope that that continues after you leave, Tom, and I'm sure it will. Tom, not only, he was like air conditioning, not just because the clerk's office went unnoticed, but also because Tom himself is pretty cool. Cool under pressure. Sometimes he would come into our conferences, and it could have been some kind of an emergency, and he would say something like, you know, there's a riot going on outside, but the police came and we took care of it. And we said, excuse me, what did he just say? I think he said there was a riot outside. Oh, yeah, but don't worry about it. We took care of it. Everybody's gone. It didn't matter whether there was a hurricane going on or what it was. Tom always reacted with equanimity, with calmness, and it really permeated the court. Because he was calm, we remained calm. But now, Tom, you are retiring. You don't have to be calm anymore. You're going out into the wild blue yonder. You're not going to be a public servant. And I know that you are a big Hurricanes fan. So you're going to have a new nickname now. It's not going to be Cool Tom. I brought something to memorialize your future. I brought you a Miami Hurricanes football jersey with your new nickname on it. Wild Man Tom Hall. So, Tom, enjoy it. Enjoy your future. Thank you for the privilege of being able to work with you during the time I was here. Thank you.
I think Justice Lewis already has that number. At this time, I would like to recognize Major Harding, former Justice of the Court, for comments.
Thank you. May it please the court. It's a privilege for me to be here today to celebrate the exceptional wisdom the Florida Supreme Court justices were blessed with when we decided in 2000 to make Tom Hall new clerk of the court. It happened shortly before my tenure as Chief Judge was set to expire, but during my 34 years of judiciary and my 50-plus years at the bar, I've had the privilege of knowing a number of clerks around the state, and I can tell you there were some that were very good, and I can tell you that there were some that were very bad, and I can say with complete confidence that none of those were able to compare to the excellence that we saw exhibited here by a wise choice, Tom Hall. Most all here remember, I look out and see that the age is appropriate for you to remember, that in November of 2000 an election took place We all remember that during that night, the candidate Gore called the candidate Bush and conceded the election, and then later on called and withdrew his concession. We remember the press would call a winner, and then they would recant and say that's not right. We saw lawsuits begin to be filed in the courts around the state. Butterfly ballots, hanging chads, absentee ballots, cries for recounts were daily in the news. And it became very clear and obvious to those of us here that our court might ultimately be involved in some of the resolution of those issues. But through the remarkable efforts of, and at the request of Tom Hall, lower courts around the state began to fax copies of all pleadings relating to the election to this court. Now, remember, this was before iPads and electronic filing, and it soon became obvious that faxing these pleadings was not going to work. And Tom arranged to establish an email address for those pleadings to be sent to him, and those pleadings were sent to him by email and were printed and distributed to the justices for their review. 6 months and 14 days after Tom Hall took office, on November the 15th, 2000, at 4:38 in the morning, the marshal called Tom Hall and told him that an attorney for the Secretary of State had brought a pleading to the court at 4:30 in the morning to be filed. Tom got up, got dressed, came to the court, and docketed the first pleading in that event. It became obvious that the press would be in the court building from morning to night to get copies of pleadings filed with the court, with the clerk. And Tom, in an effort to avoid that, set up 2 pages in a website, one under the clerk's office heading and one under the press heading, so that the public and the press could get a copy of every pleading filed in every case in this court without entering the building. No one had to come into the building and go to the clerk's office. And this was magic, my friends, not only for the clerk, but for the marshal, Wilson Barnes, who was greatly concerned about the security and how to manage the potential crowds that were forming and how to keep them outside of the court. Even with copies being available online, many copies had to be made. And this presented another challenge for our new clerk. During the election events, the big old, and I mean old, Xerox copier the clerk's office had used for how many years? We don't know, but for years. It broke down when they were getting ready to print an opinion that was to be released. Tom Hall, in his usual calm demeanor, called all of the employees together. They spread out to the justices' chambers, to the court administrator's office, to the library and other places, and made copies on our machines of that opinion to be handed out when Tom and Craig Waters went out to announce the decision of the court. After that, Tom arranged for a Xerox repairman to be present in the court at all times. During that election, Tom reports that over 600,000 copies were made. That's a lot of trees. Craig Waters and Tom Hall frequently appeared on the steps of the building to explain to the press a decision of the court or some other significant event, like letting them know that at that time the record of the court was being sent to the Supreme Court, was being loaded on a FedEx truck out back to be overnighted to Washington. And with that announcement, the press immediately left Craig and Tom on the front of the Supreme Court and came running around to the back of the court to see the trucks being loaded, and obviously the record on the truck was far more newsworthy than anything Craig or Tom would have to say that day. While Craig Waters did most of the heavy lifting, reporting events in the court, there were times when Craig was tied up elsewhere and that responsibility fell on Tom's shoulders. Life became interesting as time went on, and Tom found it even more interesting when a trial court record was delivered to the court, and in that record were 38,000 ballots. He arranged very calmly for those ballots to be under 24-hour guard in the clerk's office until they were to be sent somewhere else. When our second decision was appealed, and he was hoping this would be the opportunity to send them somewhere else, but when our second opinion was appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States, that court accepted jurisdiction on a Saturday. And in the order accepting jurisdiction, they said they wanted the record of this court to be in their clerk's office by noon of the following day. And the part of the record of that case was those 38,000 ballots. And Tom had the calmness to call the clerk of the Supreme Court in Washington and ask, do the justices really want these ballots? The clerk said, wait a minute, I'll call you back. He called back and said, don't send the ballots. He was told also when he tried to find FedEx truck to put the record on to send to Washington that there were no overnight deliveries out of Tallahassee on Saturday. And so in his calm way, he called and arranged for a state plane to be available Sunday morning, and he took the record on Sunday morning and flew it to Washington, and the record was delivered intact and on time to the Supreme Court of the United States. The court did not have to wait 10 to 13 years to evaluate what a good decision we made when we selected Tom Hall to be our clerk. In his calm, his steady, methodical way, Tom made what could have been a catastrophic event of extraordinary proportions seem like a day-to-day course of events. He used previously unused technology to make the court seem ahead of itself by providing to the court, the press, the public, and actually to the world what they needed to know even before they even knew what they needed to know. I could not help but notice the difference between the way the press and the world were informed about the judicial decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court as opposed to the manner in which the decisions of our court were distributed. Tom, you made us look good. So, Tom, you think it's time to retire? Well, I will tell you that that's the only decision that you've ever made that I've questioned. And yet I understand, but I want you to know that we appreciate your years of service to the state, the court, the entire legal system of Florida. You've made a mark that will be obvious for many years to come. We wish you well. Blessings.
I'd now like to recognize the Honorable Martha Warner, Judge of the 4th District Court of Appeal, for comments.
May it please the court. Going next to last and speaking about Tom means that I'm kind of at a disadvantage because everybody else has said all the wonderful things about Tom that I would have also said, but as my colleagues know, that never stopped me from talking. When I met Tom, he was the director of central staff at the First District Court of Appeal. He and I were appointed to serve on the original District Court of Appeal Performance and Accountability Committee, the committee tasked with figuring out how courts would respond to the constitutional mandate of performance-based budgeting and management. I wondered at our first meeting, not knowing Tom that well, not knowing Tom for hardly at all, what special value a staff attorney, even a director of staff attorney, would have for the project. Well, it didn't take long for me to find out. Tom not only knew so much about the operation of the DCAs, he had a tremendous aptitude for court management and the intellectual challenges involved. Developing a response to performance management that respected the independence of the branch was an intense and challenging project. Tom was instrumental in the entire project, providing quiet leadership, guiding committee decisions, as well as advocating our results to a very skeptical group of judges and legislative committees. This work, which has Tom's DNA all over it, led eventually to performance and accountability in the trial courts, as well as the creation of the trial court and appellate court budget commissions, extremely significant innovations in the branch. About the time we were completing our first performance and accountability study in 1999, Sid White retired from the Supreme Court, and Tom mentioned he was considering applying for the clerk's position. Since I had actually wondered how the first DCA could keep such a talented person for very long, I was very supportive because I wanted to make sure he didn't leave the court system. He was just too valuable. When he did apply, I guess I wasn't shy about letting some of the justices know that Tom really was the best person for this job, because I knew that to be absolutely true. Fortunately for the Supreme Court, as Justice Harding said, and for the state of Florida, the justices did appoint Tom as clerk. And they also appointed him to about every judicial committee and bar committee on the planet. He continued to serve with me on performance and accountability, as always providing both knowledge and expertise to accomplish the many tasks that were assigned to us. Some of the important projects that we were all involved in were creation of rules determining the necessity for increasing, decreasing, or redefining appellate court districts, and the criteria for determining the need for additional appellate court judges. We also studied reduction of delay in dependency and termination cases, which resulted in rule changes that have actually significantly reduced delay on appeal in these important child cases. None of this would have been possible without Tom's participation and leadership. Because he had the confidence of the Supreme Court, he brought gravitas to our discussions and our outreach to constituent groups, such as the county clerks, whose buy-in we had to have to make these projects successful. Tom was also effective with the legislature when he would appear in front of them on various projects. Tom and I went together to see the legislators on several issues involving electronic filing, as well as some other performance measures. He had a tremendous credibility with the senators, and they trusted what he said on behalf of the courts. I actually don't think there's any other person in the entire branch that has as much knowledge about he has in the court management of the courts of Florida. He has worked collegially with all groups and all types of people, and I have watched committees stop and listen very carefully when he offers his opinions and advice. Over the years, I know that there have been sometimes temptations dangled to take him away from the court. He has stayed away because he has court management in his blood. That may sound a little wonky, but I assure you it is not. Effective court management is at the core of securing justice for all, of assuring procedural due process to the citizens of this state. Court management has as much, if not more, impact on the day-to-day lives of our citizens who access the court than a blockbuster decision on a constitutional amendment or a search and seizure decision. It also increases judicial independence when courts efficiently and effectively manage themselves. This is the contribution that Tom has made to the judicial system of the citizens of the state of Florida through his extensive work as clerk of the court. I wish you well on your new endeavors, Tom. I know you're not really going to retire, but you're going to use your knowledge in different ways to benefit the court system. I am sure that you will be successful in all that you do. thank you so much for being part of all of the judicial branch and all that we've done, and I will surely miss you.
At this time, I call upon my colleague, the Honorable Barbara Pariente, to make remarks.
Thank you. I want to first acknowledge those at the court who have worked so hard to make this retirement ceremony a special one for Tom. If I had everyone stand up, I would use my limited time, but you know who you are, and we thank you. And the way those that helped did so willingly, to me, speaks volumes for how Tom is admired, not just by the justices, not by the appellate court clerks, the clerks of court, but by everybody in this courthouse. And I see out there many familiar faces, including many of our deputy clerks and clerks who have worked under Tom's supervision. Thank you for being here with us. It's been my privilege to have worked with Tom for his entire tenure as clerk of the court, which lasted through 8 chief justices. When we first advertised for the position upon Sid White's retirement after 35 years as clerk, Tom was the only logical choice, and you have by now heard why. Now, Tom has grown with this position, many times forced by events beyond his and our control, starting with the presidential election that hit the court in 2000, and also the 6 hurricanes that hit the court in 2004. Through it all, Tom and we did not coordinate what adjectives we would use Tom, but here's what Tom has remained calm, steadfast, and here is one that I think everybody would use, serious, very serious, helping the court ensure that the citizens of Florida are well served by the judicial branch, always going the extra mile and more. Tom's dedication has never wavered. He has been available and connected, not just 9 to 5, but in the wee hours of the morning, 24/7. I can attest, and I know there are several of you here can attest, to seeing his emails at midnight and then again at 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm not one that would have seen your email at 4 in the morning, but I know they're there. And through it all, Tom has remained calm, steadfast, and serious, very serious. In fact, not counting today, how many of you, and not counting Lisa and Matt, how many have you seen Tom crack a smile? Anybody? Okay, how about a big smile? Exactly. The biggest change over the past 13 years in Tom, though, has been his physical attributes. We are all familiar with this image of Tom, right? Tom, there's a little smile, a little bit of a smile there, Lisa says. Okay. But in his early years, Tom was described as a young Abe Lincoln, tall and lanky. Now, Lincoln didn't smile much either. Can you see the resemblance? But here is a photo that I was able to find of Tom from his first security badge issued to him right as he began working as clerk and before experiencing the presidential election of 2000. What do you think? Did he smile? Now, there is another prominent change that has occurred in the past 13 years, and it's something that Tim referred to, and that is there is something permanently attached to Tom, his iPad. Who here has seen Tom, other than today, without it? Well, I'm sad to say, Tom, this was a court-issued iPad. It's going to have to be surgically removed. But seriously, and Tom, as we know, is serious, very serious. Tom has accomplished so much for the court, the appellate courts, and the court system, and even a stint as acting marshal while he was also clerk. That Tom Hall has become synonymous with the Supreme Court of Florida. Tom, you will be missed not only by the justices of the court, the appellate judges, and the appellate clerks, but also by another constituency, the tens of thousands of prisoners who have corresponded with you and consider you their friend. As one prisoner wrote in the shortest habeas petition Tom received during his time as clerk, quote, "I want out now." And that's exactly what Tom said to us when he informed us of his retirement. I want out now. Finally, we searched for the most appropriate picture for the solemn occasion, and here it is. All right. Tom, with a big smile on his face, waving goodbye. Tom, you have had a great ride. You have wrangled with technology. You have taken the bull by the horns. And you have learned how to deal with bull. We will be sorry to see you riding off into the sunset, but we will never forget the enormous contributions to this court and the judicial system in advancing the administration of justice. Thank you, wild man, for your service to us.
The court now recognizes Karen Bell as chair of the appellate practice section of the Florida Bar to approach for a presentation to Tom.
May it please the court. Thank you, Chief Justice Poston and other members of the court for allowing me on behalf of the appellate practice section to recognize Tom and some more of his incredible contributions. As we've heard today, his contributions to the court, the legal system, the judiciary simply cannot be overstated. But there's one more organization to which his extensive efforts have been key: the appellate practice section of the Florida Bar, and his unending assistance in helping to develop the relationship between the appellate judiciary and the appellate practitioners. As you know, and as we've heard today, before becoming clerk of the Florida Supreme Court in 2000 and after leaving private practice in Miami, Tom was a chief staff attorney at the First District Court of Appeal for 10 years. And it was during that tenure at the First District that Tom first came on the appellate practice section scene. Since then, his ongoing efforts for the section have been invaluable. First, in 1997, Tom planned for and initiated one of our signature's key CLE events that exists to this day, the Appellate Practice Workshop, also sometimes known as the Learning Through Doing Workshop. Because of Tom's relationship with Stetson University and the appellate courts, the section held its first workshop in 1998. For those of you who have not attended or participated in the program, it is an intensive skills workshop and an incredible opportunity where the lawyers write mock briefs that are graded by judges. We have mock oral arguments, and attorneys have the unique opportunity to learn and work with the appellate judges in developing and honing their appellate practice skills. I attended it in 1999, the second workshop. It was fantastic, and having the ability as a young lawyer to learn from judges and justices was simply incredible, and in large part due to Tom's effort, and thank you very much. I still have that videotape somewhere. Now, despite Tom's retirement from the court today, he has already volunteered to help me and the section put on another workshop next spring. So when you get a call from me or from Tom, don't turn it down. I've already tried to wrangle in Judge Webster today, so don't be surprised. On top of that incredible program, the Appellate Practice Section's Pro Se Handbook is another Tom brainchild. After a year or so of planning, the Pro Se Handbook went into publication in 2002 and to this day serves as a guide for appellate pro se litigants before the Florida courts. Tom has also been instrumental in facilitating the annual discussion with the Florida Supreme Court at the Florida Bar annual meeting. And it goes without saying that Tom kept the appellate practitioners up to date and involved and knowing every detail of what was going on in the planning for e-filing and made sure that we were all up and ready to go. Tom also served as an officer beginning in 2001 for the section as a treasurer, and then he even served 2 years, delaying his own advancement in the section, 2 years as vice chair so as not to conflict with his position as chair of the National Appellate Court Clerks Association. And he ultimately served as our section's chair in 2005. He is also a recipient of the section's James C. Atkins Award, which is presented to a section member who has significantly contributed to the field of appellate practice in Florida. As today's presentations confirm, without doubt, to say that his contributions to appellate practice are significant is an understatement. The section's purpose is to promote excellence and professionalism in appellate practice. Tom embodies everything that the section strives to achieve. It is my honor to present Tom with this plaque and to thank Tom for his years of service on behalf of the Appellate Practice Section of the Florida Bar and in recognition for outstanding service to the section and as its chair for 2005 to 2006. We look forward to sharing the next chapter of your amazing career. Thank you.
At this time, I would ask our clerk of court, the Honorable Tom Hall, to approach and give his response.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. I never thought I'd get to speak at my own funeral, but I'm kind of glad I did. As I've told many of you, I didn't actually want to do this ceremony. I really generally don't like them, and I certainly don't like them about me. But one evening, I got an email from the chief saying to remind me to talk to him the next day about my retirement ceremony. And John Tomasino is going to be the new clerk. This is your first tip. If you respond to those emails at night, they respond back. So I responded and said, well, I really don't want to do it, but I will come talk to you about it. So the chief responded and said, well, come see me tomorrow and I'll try to talk you into it, which I knew meant I wasn't getting out of it. So at any rate, I did go talk to him and I said, well, I definitely want to do it. He told me what they had in mind. It was going to be in the courtroom. And one of the things I asked him was, well, if it's in the courtroom, can we close the clerk's office? Because what happens is these ceremonies, they all take place, everybody's in here and everybody's having a good time, and there's often a reception out there and there's food and everything. But while that's all going on, the clerk's office is down the hall working and never gets to even see these ceremonies, let alone take part in them. So he agreed that we could close the clerk's office. But you can't actually close the clerk's office, so luckily today there is somebody from the library who's sitting in, and if there's any pleadings come in, they're sitting down there to take them. They're answering phones, taking messages. And, Mr. Chief Justice, we have a procedure in place in case there's an emergency that comes in. So I couldn't bring my iPad in, but I've got my phone. So in case you hear some buzzing over there at the chief deputy area or on my phone, we may have an emergency. And of course, if it's a real true emergency, we have to get the court off the bench so you can act on it. So I have my little note ready that protocol says I would hand to the marshal and he would. And luckily, I've only had to do that once in my career. The real reason, though, that I agreed to do this was because rather than really recognizing me, this is a recognition of the clerk's office. And maybe tough for me to get through this, but the real reason that I was able to do all that I did was because of all those people over there. So I would like everybody who's ever worked in Supreme Court clerk's office to please stand up and recognize them. You'll also note we got reserved seating for the clerk's office, which normally never happens either. You always, if you mention somebody, you risk overlooking people, but there's a few that I have to mention especially. Sarah Gainey is here, and Sarah's the only other person that they let us close the clerk's office. And I was here 13 years, and Sid was here 35 years. Sarah was here 46 years and 9 months. The other people who really made it work and who really made it possible for me to do all those other things were the chief deputy clerks. Debbie Cassaw, who I see hiding back there. There you are. Tanya Carroll, who could not be here, and Susan Worley. The real reason I could be gone was because they could run the clerk's office without me, and they did on many, many occasions. I have to tell one story from the presidential election case. Judge John Newton, on Thanksgiving Day, I was watching CNN, and he came up and he knocked on the door. And we were watching TV. And so I called and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "John's here to file some new emergency case." And it was Thanksgiving Day. And I had just put the turkey in the oven. At my house, I'm the guy who does the turkey. My wife doesn't do it. Her mom is allergic to poultry, and they never had turkey for Thanksgiving. So I was the one that had to do the turkey. So at any rate, I put it in the oven, we called, we came down, and the court had split because we had issued an opinion on Wednesday night, and the court, it was Thanksgiving weekend, the court had scattered all over the country. So Debbie and I came in, we got the pleadings, we got them out to the court wherever they were, and eventually the court reached a ruling and we were going to issue an order, and Debbie and I were in the clerk's office and started to issue the order and realized neither one of us could actually do an order through the case management system. So Debbie actually typed it in Word, and we issued it that way because that was the only way we could really get it out. So it really points out that we needed all those other people in the clerk's office to be there too, because you just can't have the management. You got to have the regular people there day to day. The other person that I really have to mention is Vicki Van Blith, my administrative assistant. When we got the position that there'd be an administrative assistant in the clerk's office, we interviewed a lot of people, and I've never told Vicki this story, but I had actually picked somebody else that I thought that I was going to hire. And Debbie and Barbara Harley and Tanya basically came in and said, "You got it wrong. You got to hire Vicki." So I hired Vicki, and it turned out to be probably the best decision I ever made in the clerk's office. Thank you, Vicki. As had been mentioned, I've worked for 8 Chief Justices in 13 years and a total of 13 justices. And to a person, they have been absolutely great to work with. And to a person, every one of the Chief Justices has really allowed me to run the clerk's office and do my job as clerk. they probably haven't always agreed with everything I did in the clerk's office or every decision I ever made, but they really stayed out and let me run the clerk's office, which I have very, very much appreciated. I want to thank the speakers. I really appreciate you, every one of you who agreed to speak on my behalf, and I personally ask each one of them to do it. Bill and I have, as former Navy people, we sort of bonded in the Clerks Association and have gotten to know each other really well over the years. He did mention that high-profile thing he did, and he did make one slight mistake, and I was going to talk about this, but one other person was in on those presentations, and that was John Wheeler, who's the clerk of the first DCA. And actually, John was if you know John, and he and I are very, very different people and work in very, very different ways, but we've become good friends over the years and have always worked extremely well together, and we put in a lot of hard time on that. And to this day, I'm proud that up until this year, that was the only presentation that ever got a standing ovation at a clerk's conference. And John was the main driver of that presentation and putting it together, putting all the paperwork together and doing that. And we created this booklet about how to handle a high-profile case, and we handed it out to all the clerks, and I still have mine. I looked at it a few days ago, and it actually holds up really well. All the stuff that we put in there is still applicable today, except the technology has changed, rather drastically. In fact, I didn't even have a cell phone back then. Shows how different it was. As everybody said, it's really, really changed a lot over the years. The technology is so different than it is now. It's really true that we operate with our iPads and our iPhones, and we carry them around everywhere we go. We can communicate with the court at any time. One time a few years ago, we had an emergency, and I sent out an email, and I said, I need to hear from a justice. And literally within 30 seconds, I got emails back from 4 to 7, and the others responded a few minutes later, and they were scattered everywhere around the country. So it's a really, really different world, but the work in the clerk's office still is the same. As Tim mentioned, and I actually use that same analogy all the time, it's like a conveyor belt. It never stops. It keeps going. The cases keep coming in, they keep going out, and then the clerk's office never, ever gets a break from that. And it's part of the mentality that you just have to deal with the next thing that's coming down the conveyor belt, no matter what it is. There's a lot of other people that I'd really like to thank, and of course, first and foremost among those is my family. Nobody ever gets to do what I did unless your family gives you full support, and they have been wonderful the whole time. I have 2 sons. My older son, Troy, couldn't make it here today. He's a former Eagle Scout, highly decorated war veteran from the first Gulf War. When General Schwarzenegger talked about they do that Hail Mary thing and that group went way into Iraq to divert them, that was my son's squadron. And he was really in the line of fire, and there were a lot of sleepless nights in our household, but luckily he made it back and he's fine and has his own business now, and he's recently moved to Pensacola, so we're going to get to see them a lot more than we do now. My son Matt is a freshman in high school, or a freshman in college. I'm sorry, Matt. And if you look at the picture when he's sworn in, he's about that tall, and he's doing absolutely great in college. But the thing I want to say about both of them is, although they're boys and they've done the typical teenage thing every boy does as a teenager, they have never once gave me a serious moment of worry. They are both great sons. And that, of course, leaves Lisa and my mother-in-law, Ann. But Lisa, I've said this about her before, that God sent her to find me. And it's been a great relationship, and in a couple of weeks we will celebrate our 25th anniversary. And of course, this is typical of us. One or the both of us is actually going to be out of town, so we won't be able to celebrate them. And for those who know, over the past couple years, the person who I think has contributed as much or more than anybody else to the court system in the state is my wife, Lisa, in helping to run democracy at stake and fair and impartial courts. And she's going to continue that work, and actually, I'm going to go to work for her, helping her do some of that. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And of course, my mother-in-law, Ann, who was always there, who's taking care of Matt from the time he was little, always picked him up from school, did all of that, was always their support. And my father-in-law, Bob, who passed away last December, I wish he could have been here today. But unfortunately he can't, but I know he's watching us. And of course, the other people were my parents. My parents passed away a few years ago, and I really wish they could be here. My dad especially was. They're from Ohio, and in Ohio, like here, the trial court clerks are elected, but there they have a really unique system in that the trial court clerk serves as the clerk of the appellate court in their district. So for example, here, Bob Enzer would be the clerk of the first district. But they're all elected, except for the Florida Supreme Court or Ohio Supreme Court clerk. So when my dad in his later years after I was clerk would introduce, he would always introduce me as a politician. And no matter how much I tried to convince him that I wasn't, I was appointed and all that stuff, he would still say, "Here's my son Tom, he's a politician." A lot of people have talked about e-filing, and I was quoted in the very first bar news after I became clerk as that I would really like to see the court get into e-filing. And then about 12 years later, I was quoted, and I was quoted as saying, "I don't think we're going to make it while I'm clerk." But luckily we did. So on February 27th, we started e-filing here in the court through the statewide portal. And Courtney Brewer, who I think I saw out there in the audience, she actually filed the very first e-filing here at the Supreme Court. And as clerk, of course, I took sort of executive privilege and actually docketed it myself. Now, I'm actually pretty sure I screwed it up. And Barbara Harley, who's been in the clerk's office longer than anybody else, and I think is a fourth generation person who's worked at the Florida Supreme Court, she's the one who was doing docketing at the time. So every time I mention it to her that I screwed it up, as she's doing now, she just looks at me and smiles. She doesn't say anything. She's not going to tell me if I really screwed it up or not, but I'm pretty sure I did screw it up. But as Tim said, it's a monumental project for a statewide e-filing portal. There is no state anywhere near our size that's even attempting to do it, let alone actually pulling it off. And so I'm proud of the work that we've done on that. And working with Tim and the other trial court clerks, it's been a great experience, and I've really loved getting to know all of them and understanding the problems they have at the trial level, and it's been a great experience. In closing, one of the best ceremonies they have in this courtroom is the Tobias Simon Awards for people who've done pro bono work, and the court honors one person. Well, they honor a lot of people, but there's one person who gets the Tobias Simon Award. Sandy Dellenberg is one of the recipients of that award. And a few years ago, there was a lawyer who they talked about everything he did, and he came up and he was a white lawyer who mostly represented poor African Americans who had and he'd done it for years and years and years at a time when it was really not acceptable for white lawyers to represent black clients. And he did it for years and years and years. And people who get that award, they come up and they do like I've done, they talk about their family and they thank all these people and they do all this. And this particular lawyer, he came up and he gave this really short speech in which he said he was just doing what he thought was right and he didn't know anybody was watching. And then he sat down. So to paraphrase that, I think over the years I've been doing what I thought was my job. And I tried to do it right, and I didn't know that many people were looking. Thank you.
On behalf of the court, I would like to thank all of you for being here to honor Tom today, and to extend to you an invitation on his behalf to please join us at the Hotel Duval for a reception immediately following this ceremony. Court is now adjourned.
All rise.